It was a quiet night over Earth, the kind of night where the stars shimmered softly, and the world below rested peacefully. Little did anyone know, a massive event was about to unfold in the skies. Somewhere above, high in the cold vacuum of space, a dark shape emerged from the depths of the universe. It was not just any ordinary ship. It was a warship, colossal and powerful, and it was heading straight for Earth. The people of Earth had never seen anything like it. At first, it was barely noticeable, a speck in the sky, too small to be of concern. But within moments, the size of the ship became impossible to ignore. It stretched across the sky like a shadow, blotting out the stars. Its sheer size made even the bravest soldiers pause in fear. No one had ever seen a ship this big, this menacing. It was like nothing the world had ever prepared for. Governments scrambled to figure out what was happening. Military leaders were the first to notice the massive vessel on their radar screens. As the warship moved closer, it became clear that this was no ordinary spacecraft. It wasn't a peaceful visit, and Earth's defense systems weren't ready for an invasion of this scale. The alarms blared across every country, and people started to panic. Panic spread across the streets as people rushed home, glued to their screens, watching the unfolding events. For hours, no one knew what was happening. The warship loomed overhead, silent and ominous. Every country's military was on high alert. In a moment of desperation, world leaders tried to communicate with the mysterious force, but they received no response. It seemed the ship had no interest in speaking to them. It was clear that Earth was under threat, but from who and why? The only message that came through was brief, yet terrifying. A strange signal crackled through the communication lines, its origin unknown, but the message was clear: surrender or be destroyed. This chilling message sent shockwaves across the globe. It wasn't just a warning. It was a declaration of war. The words echoed through every city, every government building, and every household. Surrender or be destroyed. What could Earth possibly do against something so powerful? Who had sent this fleet? And what did they want with Earth? As fear gripped the hearts of many, world leaders gathered in secret meetings to discuss what action to take. Some suggested immediate surrender to avoid destruction, while others fought to keep fighting. But all knew one thing: Earth was facing an enemy beyond anything they had ever imagined. In the midst of all this confusion, one thing remained certain: Earth's defense systems were nowhere near powerful enough to stop the warship from its mission. The might of this alien vessel could crush any resistance in an instant. There was only one thing that could change the situation: humanity's secret weapon. Unbeknownst to the invading alien force, humanity had been preparing for something like this for years. Hidden deep within the Earth's most secretive military bases were soldiers trained for exactly this kind of situation. Men and women who were more than just ordinary soldiers. They were humanity's greatest asset, its last hope. But they were not yet revealed to the world. For now, they remained in the shadows, waiting for the call to action. As the warship hovered above Earth, a quiet signal was sent. A single line of communication reached its destination. It's time. The world's greatest weapon had just been activated. The tiny army, as some might call it, was about to reveal itself to the world. Though their numbers were small, their power and skill would prove to be far more than anyone could imagine. Earth's soldiers, equipped with technology that had been hidden from the public, were ready to stand against the galactic threat. But the warship above wasn't going to wait forever. The clock was ticking. Earth's leaders had made their decision. They would fight. They would resist, and they would send everything they had at the invaders. As soon as the signal was sent, humanity's hidden warriors began to move into position. The world watched as Earth's first response to the alien threat took form. In the moments before the battle began, no one knew what would happen. Would the tiny army succeed in defending the planet? Or would they be crushed under the weight of the alien invasion? The world held its breath. The first shots were fired. Earth's tiny warriors, armed with advanced weaponry, launched a surprise attack against the warship. It wasn't what anyone expected. The invasion had begun, but the tide of battle was about to change. As the alien warship advanced, it soon became clear that Earth was not the helpless, defenseless planet they had assumed. The fight was just beginning, and humanity's secret weapon would prove to be far more powerful than anyone could have imagined. The battle for Earth had begun, and the galaxy, watching from afar, would never be the same again. As the massive warship loomed over Earth, people around the world could do nothing but watch in fear. The tension in the air was thick, and the thought of surrender seemed inevitable. The message from the Galactic Empire was clear, and no one knew how Earth could possibly stand up to such an enormous threat. The warship's engines roared ominously, and its powerful beams of light scanned the planet below. The situation was dire, and the fate of humanity rested on a single question. Would anyone be able to stop the unstoppable? Yet, even as the world was gripped by terror, a plan was already set in motion, one that had been kept secret for years. High in the mountains, deep underground, and hidden within Earth's most secure facilities, an army unlike any other was preparing for war. This wasn't just any army, though. It was humanity's greatest weapon, a force that had been trained and equipped in complete secrecy, prepared for a day just like this one. The world knew nothing about them. No one had heard of them, seen them, or even suspected their existence. But now it was their turn to shine. The time had come for these warriors to take their place on the front lines. As the alien warship hovered above Earth's major cities, soldiers from the tiny army were deployed in covered locations all over the globe. Armed with advanced technology and combat tactics that the invaders couldn't even dream of, these soldiers were ready to prove that Earth had far more to offer than anyone could have imagined. The first group of soldiers was a small, elite unit, quiet, stealthy, and highly trained in guerrilla tactics. They were tasked with infiltrating the alien warship systems to gather intel and disrupt their communication network. The soldiers were equipped with specialized cloaking devices, rendering them invisible to the alien ship's detection systems. With such technology, they could move unnoticed, planting surveillance devices and sabotaging the warship's operations without the enemy even knowing they were there. Meanwhile, another team of soldiers had been sent to gather allies. Earth's greatest weapon was not just a group of individuals. It was a global effort, a collaboration of the brightest minds and the strongest fighters from every corner of the planet. And now, it was time for the world to unite. Across continents, humans in secret locations began receiving the call to action. Resistance groups that had been lying in wait, prepared for a time like this, started to mobilize. These were men and women who had been preparing for this day their entire lives. They were trained in hand-to-hand combat, sabotage, and tactical strategy. For years, they had been preparing for an invasion that never came. Now, with the arrival of the Galactic Empire's warship, they were more than ready. They knew that the stakes had never been higher. As each team took its place, the world's military leaders held their breath, anxiously awaiting the outcome. The government had known about the tiny army for a while, but they had never expected to see them in action. They had hoped for peace, but now that the war had begun, their faith rested entirely on these hidden warriors. The soldiers were about to show the Galactic Empire that they had underestimated humanity. With each passing second, their plans began to unfold. Covert operations began disrupting the invaders' communication systems, sabotage hit their weaponry, and the alien warship began to experience unexplained malfunctions. It was chaos from within, and the invaders had no idea who or what was behind it. As the warship began to malfunction and struggle with its systems, its commanders were caught off guard. They had never anticipated that their advanced technology would face such resistance. As the ship swayed in space, moments of confusion spread among the alien officers. The ship's engines flared, and the massive craft seemed to stutter as it drifted through the skies above Earth. The soldiers on the ground, meanwhile, moved into action. With the alien warship's communication system disrupted, Earth's forces gained a valuable advantage. They were no longer fighting an enemy that was organized and prepared. Instead, they were fighting against an empire in chaos. Humanity's tiny army had created confusion and fear within the invaders' ranks, and now it was time to strike. The hidden warriors' skills, combined with their secret technologies, proved to be Earth's greatest strength. It was not the number of soldiers that mattered. It was their capability and ingenuity. No longer were the soldiers of Earth just defenders of their homeland. They had become an unstoppable force, using their knowledge, resources, and determination to push back against an empire that believed it was invincible. But as the battle raged on, a chilling realization swept over both sides. Earth's hidden weapon wasn't just a force of defense. Humanity was now capable of going on the offense, and the war had just begun. Earth's soldiers would no longer be silent. This tiny army would change the course of history. As the warship's engines sputtered and the invaders were thrown into disarray, the soldiers of Earth knew they had only just begun. This wasn't a battle for survival. It was a battle for humanity's place in the galaxy. As the battle raged on, the world held its breath. The alien warship, once so confident in its superiority, was now in chaos. The hidden warriors of Earth had already made their mark. The warship's communication systems were failing, its weaponry malfunctioning, and its engines sputtering. The alien forces were scattered, confused, and beginning to lose control of their own ship. The tiny army, Earth's greatest secret, had managed to create a massive disruption. However, as the dust settled and humanity's warriors moved into position for the next phase of their plan, they realized something that shook them to their core. The Empire's warship was not alone. The Galactic Empire had dispatched several more ships to Earth's orbit, all of them bigger, faster, and more powerful than the first. It was as if the invaders had anticipated Earth's resistance. The Empire had already sent reinforcements, knowing that Earth might have something up its sleeve. It wasn't just about one ship anymore. It was about an entire fleet, a massive armada that had Earth surrounded. Humanity's tiny army, though skilled and highly trained, was now facing an even bigger threat. As Earth's forces took stock of the new danger, one thing became clear. This wasn't just a war of technology and strength. This was a war of will. The invaders may have superior technology and endless numbers, but they had underestimated something crucial about humanity: the power of determination. The leaders of the tiny army, who had worked in secret for years, gathered together in an underground command center. They reviewed every available piece of intel, looking for any edge that would allow them to stand against the Empire's reinforcements. Their minds raced as they analyzed the patterns of the enemy fleet, hoping to uncover some weakness. They knew that their next move had to count. One commander, a woman known only to her team as Agent X, stood tall, her face determined. "We have to take the fight to them," she said. "We can't afford to wait for them to attack us. We know how to fight this war. It's time to show the galaxy what humanity is truly capable of." Her voice was calm, but her words resonated with the intensity of the situation. Earth's hidden warriors had disrupted the invaders' systems once before, and now it was time to push further. But they needed a plan, a risky strategy that could put them on equal footing with the Empire's fleet. Deep within a hidden underground lab, scientists worked tirelessly, crafting the ultimate weapon, a device capable of disabling the Empire's ships from a distance. They had learned from the mistakes of the past and knew that they couldn't rely on brute force alone. The scientists had discovered a way to manipulate the energy signatures of the alien ships, scrambling their advanced technology and causing their weapons to backfire. It was a dangerous move. If the weapon failed, Earth's tiny army would be vulnerable, and the entire planet could fall. But if it worked, the power of the Empire's fleet could be neutralized, and Earth would have a fighting chance. The small, elite team of soldiers selected for this mission knew the stakes. They would infiltrate the enemy's orbit, plant the device aboard one of the largest warships, and trigger it at the precise moment. The team was well prepared, But even they could not deny the gravity of the situation. Their mission could either save the Earth or doom it to destruction. With everything in place, the tiny army set their plan into motion. They infiltrated the alien ships using stealth technology, silently approaching the massive warships without detection. As they moved through the enemy's defenses, they encountered fierce resistance. Alien soldiers and automated drones filled the ship's corridors, but Earth's warriors were too skilled. They neutralized threats with speed and precision, continuing their mission without hesitation. The closer they got to their target, the more the tension grew. The device had to be planted in the heart of the warship, right in the control room, where it would send a powerful pulse throughout the entire fleet. If the device was activated too early or too late, the Empire's reinforcements would be able to regroup, and Earth's tiny army would be crushed. But something unexpected happened just as they reached the warship's core. The team discovered a hidden room, one that contained a terrifying piece of technology. The aliens had been working on a weapon that could obliterate entire planets. It was unlike anything Earth had ever seen, and it had the power to wipe out Earth's entire fleet in a single strike. The tiny army now faced a dilemma. The weapon had to be destroyed, but doing so could risk their entire mission. If they didn't act quickly, the Empire's massive new weapon could be unleashed on Earth, and all hope for survival would be lost. It was a moment of reckoning. The team had to decide. Should they proceed with their original mission to disable the fleet, or should they take a more dangerous route and destroy the weapon before it could be used against humanity? As the countdown began, the pressure was unbearable. The soldiers knew they had no time to waste. They had to make their move, now or never. As Earth's hidden warriors made their way deeper into the heart of the alien warship, time became their greatest enemy. Every step they took felt like it echoed through the corridors, signaling to the Empire's forces that they were coming closer to something crucial. The atmosphere was tense, and their mission was reaching a point of no return. The alien warship was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. The walls were sleek and metallic, adorned with strange symbols that glowed faintly in the dim light. The deeper they moved into the ship, the more they felt the presence of something dangerous lurking in the shadows. Agent X, the leader of the team, felt a shiver run down her spine. "Stay focused," she reminded her team. "We knew this was going to be hard, but we can't afford to make a mistake now." Her voice was steady, but even she could feel the weight of the decision that lay ahead. Destroying the weapon was essential for Earth's survival, but the more they learned about it, the more they realized it wasn't just any weapon, it was a planet killer. A machine that could wipe out everything in its path, rendering any resistance completely useless. They were now faced with a moral and strategic dilemma. Should they proceed with their mission and disable the Empire's fleet, or should they risk everything to destroy this terrifying weapon before it could be used against Earth? If they failed to destroy the weapon, Earth could be obliterated in one swift blow. But if they went ahead with their original plan, they might leave the weapon intact, an unknown threat hovering over Earth's future. Agent X stopped in front of the control room door, the final barrier between them and the weapon. Her heart raced. The countdown for the mission's success was ticking away, but her mind kept returning to the weapon. Her team could feel it too, the weight of what they had discovered. "We need to decide now," Agent X said, her voice sharp. "This is our chance. If we don't destroy that weapon, we could be gambling with Earth's survival. If we destroy it, we risk our entire mission and this army. But if we do nothing, everything we'd fought for will be lost." The soldiers exchanged nervous glances. Each of them understood the stakes. Some believed they should follow the original plan, disabling the fleet's weaponry to neutralize the Empire's advantage. Others, however, felt that the weapon could not be allowed to live. There was a dangerous silence among them, a tense moment where they all knew that no matter what decision they made, the consequences would be severe. "Agent X, I trust you," said one soldier, a calm figure in the midst of the chaos. "But I think we need to destroy the weapon. The longer we hesitate, the more dangerous it becomes. If we don't, it could be the end of everything." "Agreed." Another soldier chimed in. "This is what they've been hiding from us. If we leave it standing, they'll use it against Earth when they're ready. We can't let that happen." It was a difficult call to make, but Agent X knew they didn't have much time. The Empire's reinforcements were closing in on their position. Their window to act was rapidly shrinking. She nodded solemnly, making up her mind. "We'll destroy the weapon," she said firmly. "We're taking the risk." The team moved quickly, setting charges on the weapon. They knew this was the only chance to ensure that the Empire's overwhelming force would not be their undoing. If they succeeded, Earth would have a chance to survive. If they failed, Earth could be wiped out in an instant. But just as the charges were set, the unexpected happened. An alarm blared throughout the warship. The sound was deafening, and the lights flickered as the ship's defenses came to life. The alien forces had discovered their presence. The countdown was on, and their only hope of survival was completing the mission in time. "We need to move now," Agent X shouted. "We're running out of time." The team sprinted down the corridors, the sounds of alien soldiers growing louder behind them. The charges were set, and there was no turning back. As they reached the exit, the ship shook violently, and the walls around them began to crumble. The Empire was throwing everything they had at them in a desperate attempt to stop them. They made it to the escape pod just as the warship erupted in a massive explosion. The shockwave sent them flying, but they managed to stabilize the pod. As they drifted through space, they watched the massive warship crumble, its devastating weapon now nothing more than a memory. The tiny army had succeeded in their mission, but the victory came with a price. The reinforcements were still out there, and the war was far from over. But for now, humanity had made its stand. The escape pod drifted silently through space, the only sound the faint hum of its emergency systems. The soldiers sat in silence, their faces etched with exhaustion and a mix of relief and uncertainty. The warship they had infiltrated was now a smoldering ruin, torn apart by the very weapon it had once hoped to unleash. The weapon was gone, but the danger was far from over. Agent X leaned against the wall of the pod, staring out into the vast emptiness of space. The enormity of their actions was beginning to sink in. They had destroyed the Empire's greatest weapon, but the war wasn't over. The galaxy was still on the brink of total conflict, and Earth's survival was far from certain. "Did we do the right thing?" One of the soldiers, Private Collins, asked in a quiet voice. His eyes were red, his hands shaking slightly. The weight of the decision they had made had clearly taken its toll. Agent X didn't respond immediately. She knew that their victory had come with risks, and the costs were still unclear. The weapon they had destroyed was one of the Empire's most terrifying creations. It could have wiped out entire planets, but by destroying it, they had made themselves an even bigger target. The Empire was now aware of Earth's hidden capabilities, and they would stop at nothing to retaliate. "One thing's for sure," Agent X said after a long pause. "We've made them angry. And when the Empire gets angry, they don't stop until they've wiped you out completely." The pod jolted slightly, pulling everyone's attention back to their surroundings. They were nearing the edge of the system now, and the reality of their escape began to set in. The alien fleet was still hunting for them, and they had no idea if anyone back on Earth knew they were alive. "Are we going to make it back?" Another soldier, Lieutenant Daniels, asked, his voice tinged with fear. The uncertainty in his tone was shared by everyone in the pod. They had no way of knowing whether their escape pod would even be able to get back to Earth safely. "Let's just focus on getting out of this mess first," Agent X said firmly. "We'll deal with the rest when we can. Right now, we need to get back and warn Earth. The Empire won't stop. We've only scratched the surface of what they're capable of." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, the pod's occupants seemed lost in thought. They had destroyed the weapon, but now they faced the unimaginable consequences of their actions. The Empire would not take this defeat lightly, and the war was far from over. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the news of the destruction of the warship had sent shockwaves through the world's governments. The alien forces, now without their most powerful weapon, would be forced to reconsider their strategy, but they would not back down. Humanity had just made the most dangerous enemies in the galaxy. The Earth's leaders gathered in a high-security bunker, their minds racing as they tried to comprehend the events unfolding in the far reaches of space. The defeat of the alien warship had been a victory, yes, but it had also made Earth a prime target. They needed to prepare for a retaliation unlike anything the world had ever seen. In the hidden command center deep beneath the Earth's surface, the military leaders were already drafting plans for defense. They had always known that humanity was capable of amazing things, but they had never expected to face such an overwhelming force. The aliens' warship had been a symbol of their superiority, and now it was gone, leaving nothing but a void that threatened to be filled with rage. As the soldiers in the escape pod continued their journey back, the tension mounted. They had faced the Empire's most powerful weapon and won, but at what cost? They had no way of knowing how the galaxy's most powerful empire would retaliate. Every second felt like an eternity as they sped toward Earth, the fear of the unknown gnawing at them. Just as they neared Earth's orbit, a signal came through their comm system, a message from the highest authorities on Earth. The voice on the other end was familiar, but the tone was different. There was a sense of urgency in the air. Agent X, this is Commander Richards. We have an emergency situation. You've done what was thought impossible, but the Empire is regrouping. You've made them furious. We need you and your team back immediately. The world is watching. Earth is counting on you. But know this, Earth is not prepared for what's coming next. Agent X felt a chill run down her spine as the weight of the situation hit her fully. The battle they had fought was just the beginning. The Empire's anger would soon be felt on Earth, and it would be unlike anything humanity had ever experienced. They had won one battle, but the war was just beginning. The escape pod began its final descent into Earth's atmosphere, its fiery tail lighting up the sky. But as the team braced for landing, they couldn't shake the feeling that the greatest challenge was yet to come. The escape pod's descent was rough, the heat of re-entry shaking the small vessel as it sliced through Earth's atmosphere. Inside, the soldiers gripped the edges of their seats, their faces grim with worry. The message from Commander Richards was clear. Earth wasn't prepared for the Empire's retaliation, and now, the consequences of their victory would come crashing down. Agent X stared out the small porthole of the pod. Below, the familiar blue and green planet was slowly growing larger, but it didn't feel like home anymore. The war they had just started would change everything, and it seemed Earth's quiet existence was about to end. They had made an enemy of the most powerful empire in the galaxy. No one, not even their greatest weapon, was safe now. "Are we ready for this?" Private Collins whispered, his voice shaking slightly. The fear in his eyes was something Agent X had seen before, after every mission, after every battle. But this time, it was different. This time, it was personal. "We have no choice now," Agent X replied, her voice low but resolute. "We fight, or we perish." As the pod touched down, it slid along the ground before coming to a halt, its landing gear skidding against the rocky surface. The soldiers scrambled out, quickly finding themselves in a secret underground base. The air was thick with tension. They had no time to waste. The Empire's retaliation was already in motion. Inside the base, military officials and high-ranking officers were already preparing for what was to come. Maps of Earth's cities were laid out, red dots marking strategic locations where the Empire might strike first. The atmosphere was frantic, filled with hushed conversations and the clatter of weapons being loaded into crates. "Agent X, your team has arrived," Commander Richards said as he walked into the room, his face pale. "We don't have much time. The Empire has already deployed a fleet, and they are headed straight for Earth. They'll be here in less than 48 hours. Agent X felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. She knew the Empire wouldn't waste any time. The destruction of their weapon had been a humiliation, and they would want to make an example of Earth. The loss of their most powerful ship would only fuel their rage. What they were about to face would be unlike any battle humanity had ever known. "We need to act fast," Agent X said, her mind racing. "What's the plan?" Commander Richards exchanged a brief look with his officers. "We've been preparing for something like this. We have the technology to fight back, but we'll need all the help we can get. The Empire is bringing their full might to bear, and Earth doesn't have the luxury of time." A technician hurried over to a nearby console and pressed a button. A massive holographic map of the galaxy appeared, showing the Empire's fleet moving toward Earth. It was a terrifying sight. The fleet was massive, composed of dozens of warships, each more formidable than anything Earth had ever seen. "We've pinpointed their arrival, but we need to be ready for their first strike," the technician said. Agent X studied the map. The Empire's fleet was unlike anything they had ever encountered. The sheer number of ships was overwhelming, and each one was packed with firepower that could obliterate a city in seconds. They had destroyed one of the Empire's warships, but now they were facing the full force of the Empire's fury. "We've got to divide their forces," Agent X said, thinking quickly. "We'll need to draw them away from the planet's major cities, split their fleet in two, make them waste resources and time. Our best bet is to lead them into a trap." Richards nodded, a determined look in his eyes. "Agreed. We'll use every trick we have. Prepare the defenses. Earth's future depends on it." The soldiers were briefed on the plan. It was dangerous, and many of them would not make it out alive. But it was their only shot. Agent X knew that the coming battle would test everything they had learned, every skill they had honed over the years. The stakes were higher than ever. As the team prepared for battle, the first signs of the Empire's fleet appeared on Earth's radar. Hundreds of ships, each carrying unimaginable firepower, were closing in. The countdown to the final confrontation had begun. "Get ready," Agent X said, looking over her team. "This is our fight now. We may be small, but we're Earth's last hope. Let's show the Empire what happens when they mess with us." The soldiers loaded their weapons and moved into position. The adrenaline was pumping now. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting to protect everything they knew. The fate of Earth rested on their shoulders. Suddenly, a voice crackled over the comms. It was Commander Richards. "Agent X, the first wave is coming. They're almost here." Agent X didn't flinch. She looked over her team one last time. They were ready. They had no choice but to face the Empire's full wrath and hope that humanity's will to survive was enough to tip the scales in their favor. The Empire would soon know what it meant to underestimate humanity. The ground shook as the first of the Empire's warships entered Earth's atmosphere. The massive ship blotted out the sky as it descended toward the surface, its engines roaring with unstoppable power. The air was thick with the hum of energy fields and the crackle of laser cannons charging up. The battle had begun. But this time, it was humanity's turn to fight back. Agent X stood on the command deck of the defense base, staring at the screens before her. The images from the satellites painted a horrifying picture. Dozens of massive warships, their black outlines cutting through the sky like ominous shadows. The countdown to the final battle had started, and humanity was staring down its worst nightmare. "We have to stop them now, or they'll tear this planet apart," Commander Richards said, his voice grim. Agent X nodded, her jaw set in determination. "We can't let them destroy Earth. We'll fight until our last breath." She turned to her team. "The plan is simple. We draw their forces into the trap we set, force them to divide, and hit them with everything we have. This is our only chance." The soldiers prepared for the final stand, weapons loaded, hearts pounding. They were up against a force unlike anything Earth had ever seen, but they were more than just soldiers. They were the last hope of humanity. Outside, the sound of air sirens echoed through the base. The first wave of enemy ships had arrived. The sky was filled with flashes of light as missiles were launched and laser beams cut through the darkness. Earth's defenses fired back, but the Empire's fleet was relentless. It was clear that their technology far surpassed anything humanity had, but that didn't matter. This was their home, and they would protect it with everything they had. Agent X's heart raced as she watched the battle unfold. The warships were massive, their weapons capable of leveling entire cities with a single blast. Yet she had faith. Humanity had faced impossible odds before and survived. This time, they would do it again. "We're hitting them on all fronts," one of the officers shouted over the comms. "The Empire's fleet is scattering." "Good," Agent X replied. "Don't let up. We need to keep them off balance." The soldiers moved swiftly, each of them performing their role to perfection. The trap was working. The Empire's ships were divided, and the soldiers hit them with everything they had. Lasers flashed across the sky, missiles exploded in midair, and the sound of battle raged in the distance. But the Empire wasn't going down without a fight. They retaliated with ruthless precision, targeting Earth's defenses with devastating force. The ground trembled as another explosion rocked the base, sending debris flying through the air. The soldiers dove for cover, but there was no time to rest. The battle was far from over. "We've got a direct hit," one of the soldiers cried, clutching his arm in pain. "They're tearing through our lines." Agent X's mind raced. The Empire was throwing everything they had at them, but they weren't giving up. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't just their technology, it was their spirit, their unbreakable will to survive. She grabbed her communicator and shouted into it, "All units, fall back to the secondary defense line. We need to regroup." The team quickly responded, falling back under heavy fire. The retreat was dangerous, but it was necessary. They had to survive long enough to launch the final counterattack.